Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of Bite Me. This episode is about spiritual awakenings. Typically, when I film the podcast, I'll have what is called a run of show, which is essentially not a script, but an outline of the show. But once in a while, I'll have something cross my mind that I'm like, I need to share this with them immediately. So basically, you guys remember the whole pandemic thing, and so we all went through that. And I feel like leading up into that point, the nation was coming to something. You had the whole situation with Trump, and then we all saw George Floyd, and just tensions in the nation were rising, tensions in the universe were rising. And for me personally, though I don't know everyone else's experience, my whole life had been a series of, I'm diagnosed complex PTSD, so my whole life had been a series of trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. And then something happened within the last 5 or 6 years where I was at the end of a third failed marriage and coming out of an abusive narcissistic abuse divorce with physical abuse, rape, amongst other things. And then I had to rebuild my life, which is something I've talked about on my TikTok channel. But I've finally reached a point in my life, post-pandemic, post-election, post-3 abusive relationships, where the other night I was in my basement of my house that I own, and it was kind of chilly outside, but it was warm in my house, which is something I'm always very thankful for. I never lose sight of that thankfulness. That's one thing I'll say about living in South Dakota, is when it's chilly outside, I find great peace in the comfort of my home, which I know is not a luxury everybody can afford, and I'm not bragging about it. I'm just saying, having been homeless a couple times in my life, I'm always so grateful for that. And I was sitting downstairs on my couch next to my lit up Christmas tree and a fake fireplace I recently came into, and I had eaten an edible, so we're going to take a little bit of this with a grain of salt. But for the first time, I think ever in my life, I was able to sit in complete silence with what I perceived as beauty around me, and I was really able to fully enjoy my successes that I brought to myself and my peace that I brought to myself. For a lot of us, I feel like the trauma has been going on so long that we haven't been able to fully take a breath in and out. But in that moment, at 35 years old, the other night on December 7th, I believe it was, I was able to just actually, I think for the first time in a few decades, relax. And I think that that's so important to bring up. It seems like such a small thing, but it's so important for so many of us women who have been running and running and running for so long. We've been running for so long, and some of us hiding for so long and trying to get to the next level, that I think what the nation's going through right now, quite a few people, along with the Great Resignation, are experiencing what is called a spiritual awakening and self-actualization. And we're actually remembering who we are and really doing the hard work, researching what it is we want in life. And that feels like such a foreign concept, so sadly, for so many of us, because we have been conditioned to believe that we exist for other beings' pleasure. But that's really not true. You really do have to take some of your human psychology and trace it all the way back to caveman years, and the entire, when we existed once, we just existed to exist. We didn't really know where it was going. It's a lot of this internalized capitalism that we'll touch on in a later episode. But it was very powerful for me, and also very foreign. I don't know how to describe it. Hopefully those at home know what I'm saying. That moment where you realized, oh, I have arrived. We'll take a quick break and then we'll discuss this more on Bite Me. Hey, welcome back to Bite Me. This is Season 2, Episode 8, talking about spiritual awakenings. So, if you're having, or if you have had a spiritual awakening, or maybe you have another term for it, sometime this year or recently due to events that are unfolding in front of us, what is it that you feel like you're wanting to get from life? Like for me, I finally had the realization that maybe I it's so controversial. I don't, I do enjoy being a mother, but I don't think it was my destiny. I think it is something that happened. There are some people who are like, motherhood, and, like that's their identity. I don't know that that was supposed to be mine. And now that my kids are getting older, I am able to fully accept that, okay, a lot of my time and focus has been put on other people, and I don't really know who I am. So if you're having this awakening right now like I am, you might be wondering the same thing. So things you'd be asking are, what is it that I want to do? It almost becomes this sense of entitlement, and you feel guilty about it initially. That doesn't last very long if you've truly made it to this point. And I've been thinking that I do want to travel, and I want to travel like alone. And I had a list of people who I felt like I had needed to go see, and now I'm like, well, why? Was it for that person's enjoyment or for mine? So these are things I'm planning. It becomes less of a, how can I make this thing that I want work in my life, and more of a, I'm going to make this thing that I want work in my life. And I would hope that other women, specifically women out there who are hopefully experiencing this as well, that they would start to ask themselves the same question. Like, when you take the kids out of the picture, and when you take the husband or partner, if you have one, out of the picture, wife, when you take all of the societal expectations that have been thrust upon you and put into the subconscious of your brain, when you take all of that away, what is it that you really want? And maybe you're at a place where you don't necessarily want anything. It's not to say that you have to be going after something. That's part of the problem, is that we're always racing. It's a race to nowhere. Maybe what you want is just to fucking sit there. And to that I say, if you're just sitting there, are you able to, as I did, fully appreciate your successes for what they are and your accomplishments that you have created for yourself, and not credit anybody else? Like, there are people who, oh God, once I had a guy say to me, you really think you could have a house this nice and money like that if Trump wasn't president? It's the stupidest thing I ever heard. But it's like, I created my own success. It has nothing to do with Trump or anybody else. And then there's people who'll be like, well, your parents, or if so-and-so hadn't done this or had done this and you wouldn't have that. But the truth of the matter is, you're the only vessel that was in your body the whole time. Like, you can take plenty of credit for your failures, right? That's a thing that everybody wants women to do. Why don't we start taking credit for some of our successes too? If you're at a point in your life where you're like, wow, this is my life, I don't know how I got here, that's imposter syndrome, where you're thinking that it's not possible for you to have accomplished those things in your life and that it just happened by some miraculous source. That's called imposter syndrome. Just take your successes for what they are, take credit for those successes, and don't thank anybody but yourself. I'm telling you, it was a powerful moment on my couch next to a Christmas tree and a fake fireplace. But it really meant something to me. It was the first time in my life I was able to meet Brooke. So, go home, wherever home is, or the woods, or wherever you find peace. Maybe lay out some tarot cards. I don't know what you're interested in. Sometimes I like to lay out tarot cards and sage the house. But try for me and for you. Don't try for me, try for you. To take a moment to really praise yourself for the life you've created for yourself. And if your life is feeling shitty right now, then maybe take a minute to give yourself some forgiveness and see things that weren't your fault as well. I don't know, that's all I have today on Bite Me. I just want to share it with you guys. Be sure to check out the Truthful Grimmer website, Insta, and Twitter, and I'll see you guys next time. Love ya!